Republican Congressman Brandon Gill of Flower Mound, thank you so much and welcome back to Ion Politics.
Thanks for having me on.
So you were part of it last week. The House voted to approve what President Trump calls the, quote, big beautiful bill. Why did you vote for it?
You know, I voted for it. Think of it this way. Break this bill down into its component parts. And each one are things that most Republicans all agree with. This provides massive funding for border security, for instance. It increases the number of ICE agents by 10,000. That's a 50% increase in ICE's footprint. It provides funding for the border wall, for river barriers, for all sorts of border security measures. It provides enough funding for up to, and maybe more, 1 million deportations every single year. It provides funding for our military as well, which has been so beaten down after 4 years of the Biden administration. It repeals massive portions of the Green New Deal. I think we could go further, and perhaps we will whenever the Senate takes a look at it, but that's a huge win for Republicans. It also provides work requirements for Medicaid so that working age, able-bodied people should either be working or seeking work if they're going to receive Medicaid benefits. It also takes off up to 1.4 million illegal aliens off of our Medicaid rolls. These are huge wins. All put together, of course, take all of those wins, put those aside, a permanent extension of the 2017 tax cuts, the biggest tax cuts for working class families in American history. That is a huge conservative win. It's going to put more money back in the pockets of working class families. This is something that I think we'll see broad support for.
Now the Democrats, as you know, they all voted against it. They have said that basically this is cutting people who are on Medicaid so that billionaires could get additional tax cuts. How do you respond to that?
Well, what I would say is that we are reforming Medicaid to make sure that it is sustainable and viable for the core Medicaid population. In other words, what we're doing is protecting Medicaid. We've got just shy of 5 million, about 4.8 million Americans who are working age and able-bodied who are on Medicaid but are not working or seeking work. That's a problem. Most Americans agree with us that there should be work requirements to receive Medicaid or to receive food stamps. There are 1.4 million illegal aliens that are on Medicaid right now. We're taking them off. So what we're doing is shoring up this program so that it'll survive in the long term for the core population who needs it.
And the core population being pregnant women?
Pregnant women, the disabled, and the poor.
And the Democrats have called this a matter of life and death. That's what Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, said. How do you respond to that?
You know, we have seen and we've heard so many complaints about this big, beautiful bill, just incessant calumny against Republicans for trying to extend tax cuts, for trying to reform our welfare programs, again, to make these viable and sustainable. That's something that everybody should agree with. That should be an 80-20 issue, and I think with the American public, it is. They don't want to see more and more and more people getting on welfare rolls who have no business being there. But let me tell you, here's the difference between Democrats and Republicans as we're looking at the economy and how we measure success. Democrats measure success by the number of people that they can get on welfare rolls, on the public dole. Republicans measure success by the number of people that we can lift out of poverty, that we can lift off of the welfare rolls to make independent and self-sustaining, and that's what this bill helps do.
So now, as you know, the Senate has control of this bill. How concerned are you that the Senate will make a lot of changes to this on what was already very difficult for the House to get to pass?
Well, we have a narrow majority in the House, but they also have a narrow majority in the Senate. We only have 53 Republicans there, so they've got their work to do as well. Now, I think that every single Republican in the House and in the Senate agrees that this is a bill that we have got to get passed. Now, whenever you follow it on a day-by-day or hour-by-hour basis and you see how the sausage is made, it looks like a messy process. There's all kinds of negotiations. There's back and forths. We're working long hours. The Senate's going to do the same thing. But ultimately, they're going to come up with a product that can pass through the Senate. They're going to send it back to the House. I think that they're going to make positive changes to this bill.
Like what?
Maybe they're going to look at the SALT tax deduction, which rewards far-left blue states by allowing them to deduct their state and local income taxes from their federal taxes. That is basically a handout for New York and California, allowing those states to provide welfare for illegal aliens, to pay for abortions, and all kinds of things that the people of Texas 26 and conservatives across the country don't agree with. I think that's one thing they're going to touch. I think they may go deeper into work requirements for Medicaid. We took a pretty good chunk there. It was a very good effort. I think they're going to go further. You know, another thing that I think they may touch is rolling back more of the Green New Deal. We pulled back hundreds of billions of dollars of Green New Deal tax subsidies, which is really corporate welfare. I think that they're going to go further. Those are all things that Republicans should agree with, and I think we'll be able to get it passed.
On that issue, as far as what the Biden administration, what was passed by Congress during the Biden administration, I don't think any Republicans supported that, but are there any projects in Texas that would be impacted negatively by the drawing back of some of that?
Well, my view is that if any business wants to go into green energy, wind, solar, whatever it is, they're absolutely welcome to do that. But taxpayers are not going to pay for that. They can do that on their own dime. And they can see if those projects in their own right are economically viable, not with taxpayer handouts. So we'll see. I think there probably are some in Texas, but those are projects that shouldn't have begun to begin with. They shouldn't have been started, to begin with. And I'd like to see subsidies pulled back. I don't think that working class families across the country should be paying for business ventures that are not economically viable.
But included in the bill is, I believe, is the expensing of new equipment,
Yep.
et cetera, for small businesses. So what's the difference there in your mind?
Well, the expensing for small businesses, those are for all businesses. Those are businesses that are in their own right economically viable, not giving particular handouts for particular business ventures in particular industries as part of a Green New Deal globalist agenda, which is what the Green New Deal was. The interest expensing for businesses or deductibility of certain capital expenditures, those are massively pro-growth tax policies. Those are things that grow the economy that we need to be pushing forward, partly so that we can get out of the debt that we're in, but partly also so that we can see a massive expansion of jobs in the U.S.
Some more widespread impact.
That's right. We're not picking winners and losers here, and that's what the Green New Deal did.
Now, there are some Republicans in Congress and some in the Senate who have complained that this bill doesn't go far enough as far as the spending cuts because the deficits still go up. And so what do you say about that?
Well, I would say a few things. One of the things is that this is a tax bill that we added spending cuts to make this fiscally responsible. This isn't a bill that's going to fix every single problem in the United States. Our deficits are going up rapidly with or without this bill. But this bill balances. It does not add to deficits, unlike what many people are saying. And it is fiscally responsible. That's what we're shooting for. I would love to see more cuts. I hope that the Senate does add more spending reform. The Green New Deal, as we just talked about, is a perfect example of that. And I think that they can make it even better and send us a better bill to the House than what we sent to the Senate.
Let's talk about some of the headlines going on. NPR is now suing the Trump administration for the president's executive order that seeks to end federal funding for NPR and PBS. What do you say to that?
I don't think that the federal government should be paying media outlets. If Fox News or Newsmax or any right-wing media came to me and said, I want special tax subsidies or I want corporate handouts for my media venture, I would tell them no. I don't think we should be doing that for NPR or PBS, which, by the way, are far left outlets that routinely promote left-wing propaganda, whether it's in their children's shows or, of course, in their news coverage as well. Outlets that routinely bash Republicans and run cover for Democrats. Remember, NPR famously, explicitly decided not to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story because, in their words, it was a distraction. That was one of the biggest stories of the decade, and yet they deliberately chose not to cover it, massively influencing, by the way, the past election cycle, the 2020 election. So these are the things that I think we've got a deficit. We've got a massive debt. We're running massive deficits, and this is a good place to pull back funding. We shouldn't have been paying for them in the first place. We got to get rid of it now. The one other thing I will say, because there's a lot of pushback on First Amendment grounds
I was
here.
just going to ask you about that, because the NPR CEO, in I guess a lawsuit or in a statement, said that it has a First Amendment right to be free from government attempts to control private speech, as well as retaliation aimed at punishing and chilling protected speech. So what do you say to her?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. We had a hearing with NPR and PBS a couple months ago, and I got to question the head of NPR, Catherine Marr, who you just quoted there. Catherine Marr is an absolute far-left lunatic. During that hearing, I brought up some of her past tweets where she was denigrating white people as a class, where she was denigrating this country, talking about how it was built on racism and other kinds of evil ideologies. I mean, this is somebody who should never be head of any media outlet, in my opinion, much less one that is taxpayer subsidized. Now, NPR has the right to say whatever they want. They have their First Amendment rights, as does any other media outlet, Fox News or NPR or CNN or MSNBC. But like those other outlets, they do not have the right to our tax dollars. That's all we're saying.
So you're
we're
saying
creating a level playing field here and saying that if those media outlets don't get taxpayer handouts, you don't either.
Well, this would change federal law, because it was Congress that created PBS and NPR as far as federal funding. So you want that changed, obviously, based on what you said. But isn't this really an act of Congress?
Well, I do think that we should codify this with Congress. Now, there are a couple ways to pull back funding from NPR and PBS. I think in the coming weeks, we're going to have rescission bills coming from the White House, which is how it's supposed to happen, to Congress, which claws back funding for NPR and PBS.
Explain that. So basically, it's the White House, the current
Yep.
White House, requesting you take back that
Yep.
Congress pull back funding it already approved.
That's exactly right, and that's a process that's been in law for a long time. Multiple presidents have used it from both parties. This is something that's widely been used. Now, let me remind you, whenever spending bills are passed, you need a simple majority in the House, and then you need 60 votes in the Senate to pass a spending bill or any law. Now, reconciliation is different. It's what's called privileged. You only need 50 votes there. Rescission bills, when they come from the White House, are also privileged. So whenever the president sends us a rescission bill that claws back that money that's been appropriated for NPR and PBS, we need a simple majority in the House, and then we only need a simple majority in the Senate, meaning 50 votes. Now, that's something that has been on the table for several weeks. I'd love to see us speed up this process. I think we've been busy with reconciliation in the House, but I think that we'll see a rescission bill here very soon.
After the reconciliation or the quote-unquote big beautiful bill is passed?
I'm hoping that we'll see it in the next several weeks.
So let's talk about the House Oversight Committee in which you sit on. Mm-hmm. Last week, after President Biden revealed that he has pretty serious stage of cancer,
Yep.
and the book Original Sin, mm-hmm. which confirmed what many Republicans had certainly been saying about President Biden's declines. Mm-hmm. So do you think that, it seems like the House Oversight Committee is now going to be investigating this. What are they looking for?
Well, there's a couple things here. First of all, it wasn't just right-wing media that could see that President Biden was declining while he was in office. The American people could see it too. The message from the Democrat Party was so reminiscent of 1984. It was, don't believe the evidence of your eyes and ears. The party gets to decide what truth is. That was the message for years and years, even as we saw Biden going up in pre-scripted speeches and forgetting what he was saying. And we of course saw it in the famous debate between Biden and President Trump, where he was absolutely incoherent for large parts of that. The American people knew that this was a problem for a long time. Now, Democrats hid that. The media hid that. Right-wing media, conservative media saw it, but the left-wing media deliberately hid that. And a lot of that is talked about in Jake Tapper's book, which you just referenced, Original Sin.
Right. So
Now,
what's there to investigate?
Well, there's a couple things here. One of them is the auto pen problem. If we had a president who didn't know what executive orders he was signing. And we know that there's been multiple conversations where Biden didn't know what was being signed on his behalf. Executive orders that impact millions of people, and he didn't know. And a lot of that was done via AutoPen, an automated mechanical signature in his name. We need to figure out who was determining who was running this AutoPen, who was putting these bills before the president. It's a real problem in the United States whenever you don't know who's actually running the country. Is it the people behind the scenes? Is it a permanent sort of governing class who works with the president? Or is it the president that we elected as people? That's a huge knock on democracy. I mean, that's about as anti-democratic as you can get. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be exploring. Who actually ran the country for 4 years?
Has the AutoPen has been used before, right?
It has been used before. It's been used by both parties, but it's used with the knowledge of the president, knowing what policies are being put into place. It is not normal, and I don't think anybody can say it's normal, to have a president who is so far mentally declined that he oftentimes doesn't even seem to know where he is or what he's doing or why he is where he is. And whenever you have a president in that state passing massive executive orders or signing bills into law, that's a problem.
And you think that the committee will be able to get to the bottom of that?
We should be. We have the power to request documents. We have the power to subpoena people. These are really big issues that strike at the heart of our democracy. Not only his mental state and the cover-up. I mean, this is a bigger scandal, in my opinion, than Watergate. And that's not just my opinion. That's Jake Tapper's opinion, who's not quite the biggest conservative, in the country. So, I mean, this is a scandal that we've got to figure out what happened with.
Last question. It's not every day you hear a member of Congress welcoming an addition to their family. So congratulations on your new son. How is everything?
It's great. He's about 2 weeks old now. His name's Winston. And the most beautiful thing about it, I think, is seeing how my oldest daughter, Marigold, interacts with him. She loves him. In fact, she cries whenever she's not in the room with him because she wants to be around him. She wants to hold him. So baby and mommy are healthy. We're doing really well. I appreciate it.
Good to hear. Congressman Brandon Gill, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.